Welcome, restless souls, to Carman's Crypt. I'm Carman Carrion, keeper of forgotten tales and curator of nightmares. You've wandered into my domain, where each week I unearth a fresh horror from the depths of human imagination. In these darkened halls, stories wait like hungry shadows. Each tale we've collected whispers of terrors both ancient and new. From crumbling mansions where something skitters behind the walls, to that strange text message you received at 3 a.m. from a number that shouldn't exist. So gather close. The candles are lit, the shadows grow long, and the witching hour is upon us. Are you prepared to face what lurks in the darkest recesses of Carman's Crypt? Lock your doors, still your nerves, and remember, here, every fear comes to life. This is Carman's Crypt. Your sanctuary of scares awaits. Ever notice how writing horror is like performing surgery? You need steady hands, laser focus, and the ability to work precisely, even when exhaustion sets in. That's why I've been relying on Magic Mind to keep me in the zone while writing a grubworm. As a horror writer, my biggest fear isn't the monsters I create. It's the brain fog that creeps in when I'm on deadline. Just when I'm visualizing the perfect parasite burrowing under someone's skin, my concentration slips away like sand through fingers. That's where Magic Mind has become my creative lifeline. Their nano-encapsulation technology releases caffeine gradually throughout the day, so I maintain steady focus without the jittery peaks and crashes. Perfect for those long writing sessions when I'm crafting those skin-crawling details that keep readers awake at night. The science behind it is fascinating, a blend of adaptogens and nootropics that help your brain manage stress while enhancing cognitive function. Translation: I can describe grotesque body horror with clinical precision while maintaining my own mental composure. Just last week, I wrote the surgical extraction scene in Grubworm until 2 a.m. without losing my train of thought. That kind of sustained creative flow is worth its weight in gold, or in my case, fictional blood and viscera. I've arranged a special offer for listeners. 50% off your first order at magicmind.com at Carman.edu with code Carman50. And they stand behind their product with a 100-day guarantee. Use the entire supply, and if it doesn't work for you, they'll refund your purchase completely. Links in the show notes, as always. Now prepare yourself for a tale of uninvited guests that make themselves at home beneath your skin. Welcome to Grubworm. Picture, if you will, a traveler returning from distant shores, carrying within them an unwelcome souvenir, a passenger that feeds on flesh. In the quiet spaces beneath our skin lie territories uncharted and vulnerable to invasion. Our tale begins with an itch, as so many nightmares do. Amy scratched her forearm absently as she unpacked. The Costa Rican sun had left her skin tanned and freckled, but the persistent itch that started only yesterday on the flight home, probably just dry skin from the airplane air, she thought. Her apartment felt smaller after 3 weeks in the jungle. The research expedition had been grueling but exhilarating, cataloging rare insects, trudging through muddy undergrowth, falling asleep to the cacophony of unknown creatures. Now the silence of her urban efficiency felt oppressive. She scratched again, harder this time. The spot on her inner forearm had become raised, a small red bump no bigger than a pencil eraser. Mosquito bite, she decided. The jungle had been full of them. In the shower, she examined the bump more closely. The center had darkened to a purplish black, like a tiny bruise. She pressed it gently with her fingernail and winced at the sharp pain that radiated up her arm. Infection? Maybe. She'd start some antibiotic cream. That night, Amy dreamed of movement beneath her skin, of tiny legs marching along the pathways of her veins, and mandibles scraping against the underside of her flesh. She woke sweating, her hand already scratching at the bump. In the dim glow of her bedside clock, she could swear the redness had spread, tendrils of inflammation creeping toward her wrist and elbow. Just a trick of the light, she told herself. Just jet lag playing tricks. Dr. Williams examined Amy's arm with practiced indifference. Looks like your standard insect bite with some inflammation. Were you in a tropical area recently? Costa Rica, Amy said. A research expedition in the Monteverde cloud forest. The doctor pressed around the bump, which had grown to the size of a dime. Any fever? Nausea? No, Amy said. Then, hesitantly, but it feels like it's moving sometimes. Dr. Williams smiled indulgently. Paresthesia, a pins and needles sensation, common with inflammatory responses. He wrote a prescription for a topical steroid. Apply this twice daily. If it doesn't improve in a week, come back. But Amy knew what paresthesia felt like. This wasn't it. This was rhythmic, deliberate, like something chewing. At home, she stared at the prescription tube, then set it aside. Instead, she found a magnifying glass and examined the bump more closely. The center had developed a tiny, almost imperceptible perforation, like a pinprick. As she watched, a thin, clear fluid beaded at the opening and trickled down her arm. The fluid smelled faintly metallic. That night, the dream returned, more vivid now. She stood in the cloud forest, rain pattering on leaves above her. Something crawled across her hand, a beetle of some kind, its carapace iridescent in the diffused light. Before she could brush it off, it bit her, then burrowed into the small wound with horrible efficiency. She could feel it tunneling beneath her skin, hollowing out a space for itself, secreting something that dissolved her tissues into a slurry it could consume. Amy woke screaming, scratching frantically at her arm. The bump had grown, now the size of a quarter, angry and red. The skin around it felt hot to the touch, and there was movement, definite movement, a subtle rippling beneath the surface. Something inside her shifted. Amy didn't go to work the next day, or the next. The university called. The museum director left voicemails about the insect specimens she collected. Her mother texted, asking about Sunday dinner. Amy ignored them all. The thing in her arm required her full attention. She had covered her windows with blankets, plunging the apartment into perpetual twilight. The light hurt her eyes now, made the movement under her skin more agitated, more angry. She remembered, vaguely, setting up a video camera on a tripod, pointing it at her arm as she slept. Remembered watching the footage in horror, the unmistakable writhing beneath her skin, the way the bump pulsed and contracted in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Sometimes she thought she could hear it, a tiny, wet sound, like something chewing through rotting fruit. On day 5, Amy took a razor blade from her bathroom cabinet. The skin around the bump had turned a mottled purple-gray, with thin, dark lines radiating outward like roots or tunnels. Swallowing hard, she pressed the blade against the center of the bump, where the pinprick hole had widened slightly. Clear fluid oozed out, thicker, with threads of pink. "Come out," she whispered. "I know you're in there." The blade sank into her flesh, parting it with surprising ease. There was pain, bright and clarifying, but also relief, a release of pressure she hadn't realized had been building. More fluid flowed from the incision, along with something darker, thicker, something that moved. A thin, segmented appendage, no thicker than a thread, emerged from the wound, waving almost curiously in the air. It was followed by another, then another. Amy watched, transfixed, as a tiny head eased out of her flesh, glossy black, with pinpoint mandibles that clicked together soundlessly. The creature pulled itself from the wound with a wet, sucking sound, its body segmented and glistening with her fluids. It wasn't large, perhaps the length of her little fingernail, but its presence filled the room. Its existence consumed her world. "What are you?" she breathed. The grub turned toward her voice, though it had no visible eyes. Its body pulsed, swollen with her dissolved tissues. And then, with a movement so swift she nearly missed it, it retreated back into the wound, back inside her. She felt it burrowing deeper, no longer content with the surface tissues of her arm. It wanted more. The pain had become her companion, a constant throbbing presence that marked the creature's progress. It had moved past her elbow now, tunneling through the soft tissue of her upper arm. Sometimes she could see the path of its movement, a subtle raised trail beneath her skin that crawled upward centimeter by agonizing centimeter. She had tried once more to remove it. After the third glass of vodka, she had taken kitchen shears to her arm, cutting a wide, messy circle around one of the tunnels. Blood flowed freely, but the creature had sensed her intent and moved deeper, burrowing into muscle where she couldn't reach. The wound became infected. She packed it with salt, welcoming the pain as a distraction from the ceaseless chewing. She stopped sleeping in her bed. The sheets had become stained with the clear fluid that now seeped constantly from the various holes in her arm. Instead, she sat in her bathtub, letting the fluids drain away, watching the slow progress of corruption spread across her flesh. She found herself talking to it. "Where are you going?" she asked as a new tunnel appeared near her shoulder. "What do you want?" Sometimes, in the moments between wakefulness and fevered sleep, she imagined it answered, not in words, but in sensations. Hunger. Always hunger. It didn't hate her. It didn't even know her. She was just food. Dr. Williams called twice. Amy let it go to voicemail. "I'm concerned about your missed follow-up," the doctor's voice said mechanically. "Please call our office to reschedule." Amy laughed bitterly. What would the good doctor say now? What steroid cream would he prescribe for a creature eating its way through her body? No, this was between her and the grub now. A relationship more intimate than any she had ever known. The grub reached her shoulder on day 12. Amy sat naked on her bathroom floor, watching in the mirror as the telltale bulge moved across her clavicle with terrible purpose. Her left arm hung useless at her side, the flesh gray and withered where the creature had already fed. It had grown. Through glimpses in her makeshift incisions, she had seen its segmented body swell to the thickness of her index finger. its mandibles now sharp and clearly defined. Its movements had become more confident, more deliberate. It knew where it was going. "The heart?" she asked, her voice a dry croak. "Is that what you want?" The bulge paused at the base of her throat, as if considering. Then it changed direction, moving upward toward her jaw. A new fear gripped her. "No," she whispered. "Not that, please." She fumbled for the kitchen knife she'd been carrying. Her fingers, stiff and clumsy, struggled to grasp the handle. The movement beneath her skin accelerated, as if the creature sensed her panic. It inched upward along her neck, leaving a trail of raised skin in its wake. Amy grabbed the knife and pressed it against her throat, just below the moving bulge. "Stop," she said, "or I'll kill us both." The movement paused. For a delirious moment, she thought it had understood, had decided to retreat. Then she felt a new sensation, a tearing inside her neck, as the creature changed direction, not up toward her head, but inward, toward her throat, toward her voice. The pain was explosive, radiating through her jaw and into her skull. She tried to scream, but her vocal cords seized. Something was chewing through them, severing her ability to make sound. The knife clattered to the tile floor. Amy clutched at her throat, feeling the frantic movement just beneath her fingertips, her mouth filled with a coppery taste. When she coughed, something dark and viscous spattered the bathroom mirror. The knocking at the door seemed to come from another world. "Amy?" It was Heather from next door. "Are you okay? There've been sounds." Amy sat on the bathroom floor, staring at her reflection in a hand mirror. Her neck had swollen to nearly twice its normal size. The skin stretched tight and shiny. Dark veins mapped the creature's tunnels across her flesh. She could no longer speak. The grub had seen to that. But she could write. With trembling fingers, she scrawled on the back of a gas bill, "Help me." The journey to the front door was arduous. Her balance was off, her vision blurring at the edges. The grub's activities had taken their toll. She had lost weight, her clothes hanging from her diminished frame. She leaned heavily against the wall, sliding the note under the door with the last of her strength. Footsteps retreated rapidly. Heather had seen it. Help would come. Amy slumped to the floor, her back against the door. The movement in her neck had subsided temporarily. The grub was resting, digesting. She fought to keep her eyes open. Need to stay awake. Need to be conscious when help arrives. But the darkness at the edges of her vision was so inviting, so peaceful. Just before she surrendered to it, Amy felt the grub stir again. It had finished its meal and was ready to move on. She felt it turn away from her ruined throat, burrowing downward now, toward her chest, toward the steady drum that had called to it from the beginning. Her heart. Help would come, but Amy suddenly knew it would come too late. The grub's appetite was unstoppable, its purpose too primal and perfect. As consciousness slipped away, she wondered how many others had carried similar passengers home from distant lands. How many others had felt this same intimate consumption, this gradual surrender to hunger incarnate. And in her last moment of clarity, another thought surfaced, more disturbing than all that had come before. The grub was female, and she was pregnant. The paramedics broke down Amy's door after Heather's frantic 911 call. They found her unconscious, her breathing shallow, her pulse erratic. The massive swelling in her neck and chest prompted immediate action. Probable allergic reaction, the EMT reported, as they loaded her into the ambulance. In the emergency room, Dr. Patel leaned close to examine the strange mottled discoloration spreading across Amy's chest. He pressed his stethoscope against her skin, listening intently. Through the membrane of the stethoscope, he heard something that wasn't a heartbeat, something that sounded almost like chewing. And then he saw it, a subtle movement beneath the surface of her skin, a rippling that followed no rhythm of human anatomy. "Get a surgical team," he snapped to the nurse. "Now!" The surgery lasted 6 hours. What they found defied explanation. Tunnels carved through tissue and muscle, organs partially liquefied, and at the center of it all, a creature that resembled no known parasite in the medical literature. It fought removal, burrowing deeper as they tried to extract it. When they finally succeeded, it continued to move on the surgical tray, its segmented body flexing with alien vitality. And inside it, invisible through its translucent abdomen, dozens of tiny, wriggling forms waited to be born. They placed the specimen in a sealed container and notified the CDC. Amy survived, technically. Her body continued to function with medical support, but the damage was too extensive. Too much of her had been converted to food. Too many systems compromised. She never regained consciousness. 3 days after the surgery, a lab technician at the CDC reported that the specimen container had been found empty. The lid apparently dislodged during transport. A search of the facility revealed nothing. 2 weeks later, Dr. Patel discovered a small, red bump on his wrist, just below the surgical glove line. It itched incessantly. Probably just a mosquito bite, he thought, scratching it absently as he moved on to his next patient. But that night, he dreamed of movement beneath his skin, of tiny legs marching along the pathways of his veins, of mandibles scraping against the underside of his flesh. And somewhere in the darkness of his body, the cycle began anew. Consider the fragile barrier of your skin, that thin membrane separating you from a world teeming with hunger. Tonight, as you prepare for sleep, you might feel a subtle itch, a barely perceptible movement just beneath the surface. Is it merely your imagination? Perhaps. But then again, appetite finds a way, and nature's most perfect design may be the parasite that consumes us from within. Sleep well, knowing that in the dark spaces of your body, you are never truly alone. If you enjoyed today's story and want to try the mental performance shot that's helping me stay focused during my research and storytelling, remember you can get 50% off Magic Mind at magicmind.com/CarmanEDU with code Carman50. It's been a game changer for my creative process. And so, dear listeners, we emerge from another dark corner of Carman's crypt. But remember, the horrors you've heard tonight are merely echoes of the terrors that await in the shadows of your own mind. If you enjoyed your stay in the crypt, why not invite a friend to join us next week? After all, fear is best when shared. Leave a review if you dare, or share your own tales of terror on my social media. Who knows, your nightmares might just become my next story. Until next time, keep checking under your bed. And remember, in Carman's crypt, every fear comes alive, and no one is truly safe. Sweet dreams, if you can still sleep at all.